And there we
Hello.
are. And there we are unmuted. I really
Yep.
need to figure that one out. Well, good evening or afternoon or noon or what time you have where you are. Welcome to another show of Heart of Europa.
Yes, indeed. Welcome. My name's Katrina. And yeah.
Yeah, and I am Lynx. I see my audio is a bit low. Okay, think it's better now.
Yeah, you're better. You're a bit louder now.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we got Carnival for you today, as you might have noticed from those lovely Venetian costumes
yeah.
in the thumbnail.
Yeah, it was quite difficult to choose a thumbnail because there's so many beautiful pictures from them.
Absolutely. And the Venetian ones are particularly beautiful. Germany is very big on Carnival too, but not in quite such a fancy way. In more
No,
of a comedic way, lots of the costumes in Germany, I
yeah,
find.
Venice get people from all around the world participating in
Mm.
costumes, and some participants even spend a year making and planning their costumes and stuff like that. So it's quite intricate.
Yeah, I should imagine. Um, I've heard of it sounds like Venice is making new costumes every time and they're having a costume competition and stuff. And the culture in Germany is more that costumes will get handed down. So that's a sort of way to approach costuming for these things, which is very it's very intriguing, like the differences between the two, like the handing down of jesters' masks and jesters' costumes versus, each time you turn up at Venice, you're trying to really outdo yourself on last year. I
Yeah,
think both of those can be pretty cool.
yeah, definitely. I would I would expect it gets quite expensive in the long run.
Yeah, I imagine it does, but then again, there must be prizes offered for it, mustn't there? And I suppose the type of people who come to Carnival and do it are perhaps into other forms of dressing up, cosplay, whatever you might whatever you might do. That they maybe
Yeah,
have some of that equipment.
yeah. Still, I get a feeling, of upper middle class and stuff like that.
Mm. Oh
People
yeah,
with money
yeah.
and time
Seems
to spare.
seems like a bit of a fancy thing to do for fancy people. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
but really, a lot of places have carnival, and it really varies. Um, but mostly the main thing that it all has in common is the main events typically occur during February or early March during the period known as Shrovetide. It usually involves public celebrations like parades and street parties and other entertainments, sometimes kind of like a circus. And there are masks generally worn, and it all seems to be about casting off individuality and just bringing a sense of unity, mutual silliness, celebration, and certainly a lot of indulgence. I definitely noticed those sort of common themes
Yeah,
within pretty much all carnivals.
yeah. There also seems to be um, quite a strong tie to the rule of mischief
Mm-hmm.
that we see
Yes.
during Christmas, and in several places it sort of starts at the end of Christmas and goes until
Yeah.
the start of Lent. So
Oh yeah. There's some people who really, really are in carnival mode for a long, long time. I mean, I know in the Rhinish carnival, the first sort of carnival planning meetings are happening on the 11th of November.
Mm-hmm.
At the previous year, there's something about 11 past 11 on the 11th of November. They're already having sort of a pre-carnival celebration
Yeah.
in Cologne.
Yeah.
I mean, there really seems to be two themes to me with it, which is eating up all of your food from the winter stores. You know, all your meat and butter and lard and all that sort of stuff. And also just this constant sort of motif of reversal of norms. I think that has a large role in it. And that's interesting because it sort of reminds me of stuff that Mircea Eliade. I'm gonna probably keep bringing him up because he's one of the people who's gone into these things. Yeah, but you know, it seems like a return to chaos or a bit like sort of primordial chaos prior to any form of rebirth. And that seems to be quite a motif across cultures for various events, I would say. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to happen mostly in Catholic countries.
Yeah, it's my research was mainly on Italy. Um,
Yeah.
and it sort of have quite an interesting history around there, which I wish I had time to look into further. But another theme I've seen that seems quite important is the opportunity for anonymity, you know, with the masks and everything. That
yes,
in particular with Venice, you know, that is one of the most famous ones. And one theory of why it became so popular and huge there was because the Venetian Republic had a very, very strict hierarchy. And it was during one small period during the summer. I don't remember the day of it right now. And basically from October to Christmas, and then from Christmas to Lent, there was basically one big carnival going on with masked parades and all of that. So people then could spend about almost half a year masked if they wanted to, and you know that was from the lowest people to those highest in the hierarchy. But because
that's
then
quite something.
Yeah, so in that way they could escape their position and not be seen as much. I think it was Venice who had a council of 10, for example. And, you know, that was, how to put it, you could inform on people completely anonymously if they had, quote unquote, done something wrong. And they could get arrested and just taken away basically without a trial. So you know, communism and steroids, you could say.
Oof.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit scary.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, there was no recourse in that, so it was basically quite tyrannical for quite a while.
Good things and bad things.
Yeah,
about them.
Yeah, I do
about
think.
the carnival. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can definitely see the need for masks even for those higher ups as well.
Yes. But yeah, I'd just like to thank for Null, who's just turned up and donated a diamond, which is
Oh,
very
thank
cool.
you. Yeah.
Um, do check out for Null and his streams, and his synth mixes.
And um,
Um, we actually
he was
feature on his
doing one
dungeon synth mix.
okay.
He has it's very cool actually. He's decided to mix stories into his mixes, which is really like very flattering
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah,
So yeah, do watch out for Null and the mix if
definitely.
you are new and have not heard of it.
Yeah. And now I was very glad I had my mic muted because I had a somewhat of an muting fail on my tabs. So I sort of panicked for a bit
Oops.
there. uh,
Yeah.
so
It's hard
fortunately.
to remember to unmute like three things.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I usually do it before we start, but I forgot today. So, uh,
But yeah. So, Lynx, we were chatting a little bit before the stream, and you were saying in Norway, carnival is mostly a thing for the kids at daycare, right?
yeah, we don't have any parades or, any big events. It's mostly just for the children in daycare and in the first years of school, perhaps. So, it's mostly just fun for the children. And one tradition which I think is older and probably from some Norse uh, fertility ritual or something is a collection of birch twigs, which are then decorated with feathers. Today it's many colored
Oh,
feathers, but it probably wasn't back in the day. That definitely doesn't feel like something new. I think that is very, very old. Um,
I would think so too,
yeah, so
given the Birkanon rune
yeah,
and the birch, the connotations there with the fertility as well.
mm-hmm. It's basically when the twigs have started to get the little knobs for leaves and everything. So life is re-emerging. That is a symbolism of it, and
It's interesting.
yeah, I didn't really question it when I was a kid, but I do now.
Mm. You know what? In Britain, there's really not much. I don't know if we ever used to have like big celebrations around this time. There's nothing much that I can find about that. I know we used to make quite a big deal out of some things like May Day, and we maybe used to have like days where you could act like a fool. The April Fool's Day used to be more of a carnival type thing, maybe. But nowadays we really only have Pancake Day, and
Of all
I remember
things.
learning about German Carnival and or Fasching as they call it in the Protestant bits, and I was jealous. I was like, man, I get to eat pancakes this week. Germany gets a 6-day party.
Well,
I want to live in Germany.
congratulations on the pancakes at least.
Yeah, it's like as soon as I learned about German customs, I was just sitting there on Pancake Day, like pancakes.
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah. Well,
Why can't we have carnival?
the difference is quite stark, though you do have the tales of the cheeky pancakes as well. So,
Yeah.
do you
Yeah,
have
I don't
those?
know. I've heard of that, but I don't think I was read it when I was a kid.
No, it's one
It's
of
just
the
quite a cute story.
yeah, it's one of the very traditional ones in Norway that is told to all the kids. So you know, pancakes are mischievous, apparently.
Apparently they are.
Yeah, definitely. If you tell it you're going to eat it, then
Well, then it would be inclined to run away.
yeah,
It would be inclined to that.
yeah,
But yeah, I feel like Carnival in and of itself is really, really old. Because
hmm
of this thing where it is like a role reversal disorder end of winter type of ritual. And it seems like it's driving winter out and a return from from darkness into light is ideas that I've seen suggested about it. Fertility celebration, a New Year celebration. I mean, definitely it would be coming up to that time when you can't keep your winter stores any longer, and it might go bad.
yeah,
And so there's notions that everybody has to eat all the food to ensure that they're fed enough until new food turns up in the spring.
yeah. I definitely get the shamanistic feeling about it.
Mm.
With all of the dressing up and all like that. So
I mean, yeah,
it's sort
yeah.
of putting on a different skin, so to speak.
Mm, definitely. I mean, I know one of the German carnival characters, and I think she's more of a Cologne Rhenish type of character. Frau Holder. Um, she, if you sort of look into it, she links back possibly to sort of to Freya, and Odin or Odin's wife type of thing. There are possible connections there, and also associations with possible associations with Carnival and Nursus, and possibly Freyr. To be honest, I don't have like super in-depth information on that because these things are quite hard to figure out. But there seems to be like definitely a connection between Valhalla and one of the goddesses like Freya or Nerthus. People like trace her back to goddesses like we mentioned Berchtesgaden and the Perchten before. We mentioned them to Norse on that Christmas episode that we did with him. So yeah, it's sort of the same figures sort of cropping up. I do notice.
Yeah. Me being me, I'm very bad with names. But there's one story in the Eddas of a woman that is being burned by the acid, and then she comes back to life, and she does this 3 times. It does take my mind to that story, and some
connect. Sorceress in the beginning.
Yeah, some tie that to Freya. Some think she is Freya.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So it definitely takes my mind to that with renewal of life and rebirth and taking on a new skin. The woman then went on to travel the world to teach her gifts to the people. And is said to be the mother of the Velva. The
Yes, I know. The
Yeah,
vulva.
yeah, the shamanic women of the Norse religion. Um, so it's definitely an interesting story that I've long wanted to take a closer look at. Um,
No, same. It is. It seems to be one of the very key sort of texts, definitely.
yeah,
And I wonder, like, we should probably talk when if we talk about like the Edda and stuff. We should probably talk to someone who's like studied it a lot and really like get a perspective on it.
yeah. I should definitely do another reading of it. It's been quite some time, so
That would be really cool.
yeah. As said, we have thought about doing readings of that, so that might be a good plan. In that case, I have a wandering attention, so
Yeah.
doing narrations of it might help on that. So I'm a bit,
Yeah.
I'm a bit
Same.
mercurial.
So much I need to force myself to read.
Yeah.
So I might just force myself to read it by reading it to you lot.
Yeah, that
Which,
was my
that
thinking.
works.
Yeah, I was actually reading quite a bit of Jordanus last night on his history of the gods. It was really interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like plenty of weddings happen after Carnevale. Maybe they do.
Yeah.
Maybe they do.
Oops.
Maybe everyone's been a little bit naughty.
Yeah. Whoops. Seems like we have to get married. Surprise.
Oh no.
Well.
Lots of carnival babies.
Yeah.
That was one of the things which I was seeing mentioned about what carnival was for. Like maybe it was a time to indulge in sexual desires, probably within parameters. Like because when you have these things and these role inversions and these descents into chaos, like they were mentioning sort of gender bending sometimes in the carnival, and you certainly can't take that and then project that and say, oh, well, people in the Middle Ages were just fine with that then, because in general they weren't. Carnival was a very specific time.
Yeah, the different sort of masks, at least in Italy. They have the different sort of masks for men and women. There was one sort of mask, I don't remember the exact name. I didn't take enough notes today. But part of the name is muta, and that was for women. It was barely large enough to cover her identity. It was black. And it wasn't held in place by any ribbons or anything. To hold it in place, they bit on a button or a little mouthpiece, so they couldn't speak. Hence the name Muta.
Huh. That's a devious way of getting your wife to shut up.
Yeah.
For a whole day.
Well, hopefully it was somewhat voluntary and used by women who realized they might be talking a bit too much, perhaps about stuff they shouldn't be talking about.
Yes. Maybe it was the anti-foot in mouth moment mask.
Yeah.
It was the anti-awkward mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was used mostly in 16th and 17th century, I think.
Well, there's another specific type of mask which I will get into later a little bit. after my story. So we have two stories that are quite long today, I think. Yours is mine is certainly quite long.
Yeah, mine is about 16 minutes. So that's about half of
Mine is
yours.
like a full half an hour.
Yeah.
because I had to write it.
Yeah.
Basically. And I adapted it from a 4-act carnival play from Venice, which was very roughly outlined, although I soon learned that that was really the point of those sort of plays. But again, I'll get onto that a bit later. Should we have a story then, seeing as we are on the half an hour mark?
Yeah.
And we are in which one should we start off with, do you think?
I'm not sure. Mine is written by Edgar Allan Poe, so it's not a story for the little children. I was going to tweet out a warning for that, but I forgot it.
Yes, okay. So we're just going to say right now, if you got children, it's Poe time. He's scary.
It's scary.
Don't let them listen to Edgar Allan Poe too young. They'll turn into a goth.
Yeah, it's scary, but it's not gory. So if your kids can handle a bit of scary stories, then it should be fine. It's no gore or anything. But if they are a bit more easily frightened, then find something else to do for the next 15 minutes or so. If you are going to start with that one, we can do that.
Cool. Yeah, let's start with Edgar Allan Poe then. He's always good.
Yeah, I did enjoy doing this one, so here we go. The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as I best could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled. But the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmary, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in a matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible, and in the middle of the carnival." "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado! I have my doubts. Amontillado! And I must satisfy them. Amontillado! As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it, that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement, Lucchesi. I have no engagement, come. My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp, and they are encrusted with nitre. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado! You have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a reclair closely about my person. I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led to the vaults. I passed down along a winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. "The pipe," said he. "It is farther on," said I, "but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls." He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. "Nitre?" he asked at length. "Nitre," I replied. "How long have you had that cough?" My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. "It is nothing," he said at last. "Come," I said with decision. "We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi." "Enough," he said. "The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough." "True, true," I replied, "and indeed I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps." Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. "Drink," I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. "I drink," he said, "to the buried that repose around us." "And I to your long life." Again he took my arm and we proceeded. "These vaults," he said, "are extensive." "The Montresors," I replied, "were a great and numerous family." "I forget your arms." "A huge human foot door in a field d'azur. The foot crushes a serpent rampant, whose fangs are embedded in the heel." "And the motto?" "Nemo me impune lacessit." "Good," he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through walls of piled bones, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. "The nitre," I said. "See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it's too late. Your cough." "It is nothing," he said. "Let us go on. But first another draught of the Medoc." I broke and reached him a flagon of the grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. "You do not comprehend?" he said. "Not I," I replied. "Then you are not of the Brotherhood." "How? You are not of the Masons?" "Yes, yes," I said. "Yes, yes." "You? Impossible. A Mason?" "A Mason," I replied. "A sign," he said. "It is this," I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire. "You jest," he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. "But let us proceed to the Amontillado." "Be it so," I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued on our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused a flambeau rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vaults ahead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed by the placing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his tall torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi, he is an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. It was an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface there were 2 iron staples, distanced from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more let me implore you to return. No? Then I will positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of my masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence as I laid the second tier, and the third and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, as if my labours and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the towel, and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated, I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess. But the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a long, low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo, over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. "Yes, the Amontillado. Is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone." "For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust the torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick, on account of the dampness in the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century no mortal had disturbed them. In pace requiescat. Okay. There we had some Poe. Hopefully it didn't put you in too much of a morose mood.
He just straight up buried his mate.
Yeah,
They
alive.
walled him up.
Yeah. That is actually quite a theme from the time period it was written in, and in particular from the late 1800s. There was this cultural fear of being buried alive, so many stories are have that theme within them. It even went to the point where casks were fitted with little bells and everything, so they could alert people if they woke up in the casket buried alive. So it was
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sort of it was sort of a panic in the population, it seems.
I wonder what sort of sparked that particular fear at
Yeah,
that time in history.
yeah,
Because, of course, it was quite possible to be falsely declared dead in any other period in history and buried alive. So, what really gets the Victorians sort of going about really fearing being buried alive? I do wonder.
yeah. It seems like they were thinking about quite a few. What is the best word for this? You have the Frankenstein story being written, and it might be that for some reason the horror genre really kicked off in that time period. Um, Maybe their imagination just got a bit far or something. I don't know. I didn't come across any reason for it.
Maybe it did, yeah. I think they were making lots of new discoveries, like medically and scientifically at that time as well. So maybe they were realizing just how many people that they might have buried not dead.
Yeah. But Poe do allude to that fear at the time with Fortunato's spells. Um, he can alert someone, but the chances of anyone getting so deep into the catacombs are, well, slim.
Yes,
So,
pretty much. They
yeah.
really flipping wanted that Amontillado.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not the person you want to cross. Uh, the literary discussion about this piece is also quite interesting. There are some people who think it's just insane. I don't necessarily agree with that because the counter argument against that is his plan was too elaborate for him being insane, which I don't agree with. There's quite a few insane people who have killed people in quite intricate ways and gotten away with it.
Yeah, I don't think mental illness, in all cases, takes away your ability to be scheming. In fact, there are a few that specifically don't.
Yeah,
I can think of a couple of personality disorders off the top of my head.
yeah, definitely. And there's too many examples from history where people have been murdered, and you can't really say that the perpetrator are insane. But they do
Yeah,
they did have their reasons, even if they're not clear to us.
I I feel like we're too quick to say insane these
Mm-hmm.
days and to medicalize it instead of just accepting that some people are an absolute embodiment of evil.
Yeah. Also, it's the very natural human desire for revenge. I don't see a need to
Yeah,
pathologize that, even if it does take a few bad turns, so to speak. To pathologize is to take it a step too far. It's like sort of similar to pathologizing the natural feeling of hate, like they do these days. Um, it
yeah,
seems
yeah, I get you.
yeah, the trend is to narrow the spectrum of human behavior to a very narrow field, while at the same time allowing what is clearly mental illnesses to just be normalized. So it sort of fractures the psyche in whole populations by doing that, I think.
Absolutely does. Interesting you should mention phantasmagoria, white healing. A fascinating thing to look up that is similar to horror. It is the history of haunted houses. We do have a bit of those coming up. We do have those coming up. But yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting one. That piece from Poe.
Yeah.
And it's always a pleasure to read him.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
I chose it because it takes place during the carnival, and you do see one effect of the masking going there. Unless they were seen around the mansion of the Montresors. If they were seen in the streets before that, they saw Fortunato just with the masked man. So he keeps his anonymity.
Yeah, and that is Poe really making use of a very scary side of Carnival.
Yeah.
Because anonymity can be used for both good and exciting and fun things, but it can also be used for really bad things as well.
Yeah, it definitely made me wonder how many murders and everything have taken place during that time, being concealed with the masks and all of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Though,
and you sort of wonder what Poe would write about the internet as well. If he was alive to write about it, like how much would he find on the internet to write horror about?
He might just end up.
He might just give up.
He might just end
the
up
internet speaks for itself.
Or just reading true crime from the internet. There's plenty to choose from with that. So
yeah.
The internet can be a wild and scary place for sure.
It can be indeed.
Yeah.
We are a nice bit of the internet though.
Yeah. Even if we do read the odd scary story now and then. 2 words I'm not sure I will forgive Poe for is tight-fitting party striped dress. That's 3 words. That was so hard getting even acceptable due to my cadence.
Very much tight-fitting party striped dress. I'd struggle with that if I said it too quickly.
Yeah, I do have this little dichotomy in speaking and in particular reading in English. It's easier when I do it faster than when I do it slower. So, and at the same time, not trying to read too fast. I suppose it's control of the tongue or something.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult. But yeah, that's sort of that dark side to Carnival. I think it was there. I think it was present.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also like mentioned like social satire and grotesque body sort of masks, large noses, bellies, mouths, phalli, as the plural seems to be of phallus. I didn't know that. Animal bodies and permission to do like some sort of abusive language and some degrading acts or depictions of disease or like weird spirits and some things to do with death. So among the festivities, there are always darker motifs. It seems. I mean, quite a few weird looking, like scary masks in like the Schwabischen, the Swabian Alemannic Fastnacht.
Yeah.
They have like they have an who are jesters, but several of them, all of their costumes are made of old fabric remnants.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the Night Raven, which sounds like a character Poe would have liked. Der Nachtkrab.
Yeah. To go well with the Raven that he wrote.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a video of the noise that a raven actually makes. It doesn't really sound like Poe says it does. I ought to post a video of the noise that a raven actually makes. It's cool. It's a little bit unexpected.
They make actually quite a bit of interesting noises. They are very, very good imitators. So some of them can actually speak.
And someone's taught their raven to say nevermore, haven't they? Yep.
I would think
Someone has
so.
taught their raven to say nevermore. Yeah. That's happened.
These days,
we put money on it.
These days there might be a chance that someone have taught them how to say winter is coming.
Oh yeah, the Game of Thrones.
Or maybe doing a crossover with Valar Morghulis.
Indeed. Yeah, there's a lot of things you could teach your raven to say.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. I don't know, like, Carnival generally, it happens in an awful lot of places. I mean, I know some places where Europeans have gone. I mean, there's Mardi Gras in New Orleans, in America, and there's still carnivals in Brazil. And people go there, so it's been very widespread. And there's been attempts to ban it, actually. The Venice Carnival was actually banned. They attempted to ban it in Germany, but the Venice Carnival was actually banned.
Yeah, that was during the Napoleon Wars. Venice was, and that region was in the war and got occupied. So Venice ended up in the hands of the Austrian emperor. I don't remember the name, but he took the title emperor as a response to Napoleon calling himself an emperor.
Yeah.
And he forbade the carnival. And they...
I think that was Francis II.
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
He was Holy Roman Emperor?
Yeah.
Later Emperor of Austria?
Yeah, he was the last one. The last Holy Roman Emperor. Or in that time period. It was a bit not too much later when they lost the decisive battle and the Holy Roman Empire was dissolved afterwards. But he did ban the carnival. It was tried to be. They tried to revive it several times, but it never worked. It only ended up being, private parties.
And then in 1979 they actually managed to bring it back.
Yeah, and that was actually the Italian government who managed to do it.
Kudos to them. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to strengthen Italian traditions, and so they looked back and brought back the carnival. So, quite
Nice.
nationalistic. Yeah, definitely. Um,
Yeah, good on Italy at that time.
hmm
I don't know much about Italy at the moment and where it's headed, or and if it is or isn't sort of nationalistic route. I know that Greece kind of was last time I checked.
um, as far as I'm no expert on the Mediterranean countries, but their politics seems to be a bit all over the place.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I should pay more attention to these things, but I have no idea what's going on in the Mediterranean at the moment.
Yeah, well,
No idea.
how much can you keep an eye on? That's the question. Um,
It's true. It's true.
at least unless you live and breathe politics is maybe not what you have the energy to focus too much on. Um, so then
That is
it's
true.
and every place have their own intricacies. So seeing the reason behind something might not be very obvious, because then you have to go deep into the local history and everything, and then comes the question of subversion, like Simon Harris, may he rest in peace. He came into nationalism via Catalan nationalism, but then he realized that the
Ah,
left had occupied it. So the separatist movement for the Catalans, they want to break from Spain, but they want immigration. So that's
yeah, which
that
makes no sense. Break
that's
from Spain and then erase your own culture and your incredibly small nation.
yeah, and we see that in Scotland and all of that.
Oh yeah, you
Uh,
see it in Scotland, all right? Don't
yeah,
talk to me about don't talk
yeah,
to me about Scotland. Old. Anyone can be Scottish apart from the English thing. That is quite
yeah,
annoying.
yeah. Here in Norway, we beat our breasts in pride over breaking from Denmark and then Sweden, and most of all, we single-handedly defeated the Germans or something. Uh, at least the
Yeah.
propaganda you might think that.
I
But
mean,
if anyone can become Norwegian, of course.
yeah,
It's just values.
it's just values, yeah.
Yeah.
Scotland is just liking iron brew.
hmm
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean the PA Scotland folks are doing like a really good work on that sort of thing, and Scottish culture and stuff, and that it actually has to mean something.
hmm
They're quite a cool lot. Helped them
Yeah.
out a couple of times before. But yeah,
Yeah.
what was I even about to say?
I'm not sure, but you did mention Rio de Janeiro. The famous
Yeah.
carnival they have. That is linked to directly, officially, I think, to the Italian city of Cento,
Oh.
which have a very famous parade of floats every year. And most of the designs are clearly old, so they haven't really changed that much.
Mhm.
The city of Urea, I think. That sounded completely wrong. I'm not. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not Italian. Um, but it's a town in the northern Piedmont region. They actually have battles of oranges every year, and the origin is from medieval times.
Orange fight.
Yeah. The legend goes that in the third.
If you got like a not quite ripe or like an orange is not a fruit that just squishes. I don't know if an orange would hurt if it hit you in the face at full speed.
At this time of year, I would think it was oranges they had in storage, so they would be overripe. I would think. But apparently that, according to legend, that originated in the 12th or 13th century, where a peasant girl named Violetta rebuked the ruling tyrant, and she actually decapitated him. So I suppose she was a bit...
With an orange?
Probably not. I don't think oranges are that deadly.
Just gotta say they got some hard oranges.
Hardcore oranges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be worse.
Yeah. Well, of course.
At least it's not a pineapple fight.
Yeah, that might be a bit worse. But of course, when the local tyrant was decapitated, chaos ensued.
As it usually does when you decapitate the person who's maintaining absolute order with an iron fist.
Yeah, that tends to be the case. Eventually, other villages burned down his castle. And that's sort of the end of that story. I don't know anything more about it. But the Orange Battle is a reenactment of that, and they have a Violetta every year. And then other people have a Battle of Oranges, which represents stones and other more deadly weapons, which might not be so fun to throw at each other. So,
no.
Yeah.
Not particularly.
I just have to let my cat out, so I will be back in a minute.
Nice. Yeah. Orange fight. I'm sure that there are other food fights around in the world. I feel like there's a place which throws tomatoes at each other. I feel like that's a thing that happened. But yeah. Carnival in Germany gets a bit complicated because there's so many different variants from all different regions. Like the Swabian Alemannic carnival wants to differentiate itself from the Rhinish carnival, and they're starting all at different times. They have different carnival characters and calls for each of the villages. And I know in Swabia they're planning carnival from like the 6th of January onwards, and then on the 6th of January, what they do is they make an absolute ton of noise with whips, and they shake the bells on their costumes until they can be sure that every last speck of dust is out of them, because they want them to be clean. And that's it's certainly one. I certainly wonder why cleanliness is so connected with that day, because it's very important to make sure these jesters' clothes are clean. And in Necker, there's these people called Abstauber, with the black clothes that go to the door to clean all the mothballed jesters' clothes. And in Gothenburg am Necker, witches will conduct a similar procedure on the furniture of the local inns. And again, on Candlemas, they're doing another thing where they relate all the most remarkable incidents and anecdotes of last year. And it's in different places. Like it's called Maschken, Oberschwaben, and Strehlen and Villingen, and there's a bunch of names for it.
Uh,
And
those clothes cleaner, do they only clean the jester's clothes, or do
I
they
don't know.
do
I think
them?
they only clean the jester's clothes. I don't think they clean everybody's clothes. I feel like the witches who go around to the inns, like they're going in the guests and furniture of local inns, so you can only imagine confused American tourist in a German B&B wondering why they're getting lint rollered by a witch.
Yeah.
Kind of
It,
like, what? I don't. This is very European.
well, except for
I mean, the
underwear.
British would be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, except for the underwear, I wouldn't mind someone coming in and doing my laundry at certain
That is
times.
true.
Yeah, so, it was just an idea. Speaking of lint rollers, have people here seen the video from outside a building in the US? And a guy in a mask.
Okay, he was just standing outside with the
Yeah,
lint roller
yeah,
and just going, arms out, please, arms out.
yeah. And then
And
rolls
they're all
the
letting themselves get lint roller.
and yeah, you can go in. And people do it. Nobody questions him. It's
They're just like, even though he's
oh,
wearing a tracksuit, he's not even wearing a suit.
he's not even wearing a uniform, but people still seem to think he was some sort of security guy.
Oh dear.
Talk about sheep.
Yeah, I don't really know what on earth they were thinking. But like, I don't know. I guess lots of people just do follow
Yeah.
the crowd, and it's an evolutionary thing that people do. And because we're all a bunch of people who haven't necessarily followed the crowd, we tend to get really frustrated with other people.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget that there's an adaptive component to doing things without thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I have to remind myself that I'm a natural born contrarian. I do think I would be one of those who might have rebelled a bit if I was young in the 50s. I do tend to go against the grain. That's just my personality. I want to find my own way. But I do have to remind myself of that when the irritation gets too high of all the masked people. I startle if I see an unmasked person in the store because it's usually just me. I've done it once and I won't. I've been asked to take one on once, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And
it's been difficult for me. I haven't wanted to cause any trouble for my smallest businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But in the big ones, I've been trying to go without it because frick them.
Yeah, well, if I get questions, I will just say that I won't claim to be under 12 years old. That's one thing about Norway. They are sort of somewhat, I don't know, they don't take it too far. So children under 12 years old don't have to wear a mask. So that's a good thing. But it's also people who, for medical or other reasons, can't wear one. So I will decide I can't wear one for medical or other reasons. They don't have to know why.
Yeah, exactly. They don't.
Yeah, and 99.9% do wear masks, so I'm basically the only one who doesn't, almost. So it haven't been a problem.
Bit
Um,
depressing.
yeah, definitely. You know, if it had been one of the more elaborate Venetian masks, I might actually have worn one, but it's not. It's just a face diaper, so.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, technically, you could go around one of those Venetian carnival masks on, and they were the ones that covered your whole face.
mm-hmm.
Just be wandering around in a creepy Venetian carnival mask.
Yeah,
Do that.
I have considered that, or had a face mask on my lower half and the sheep mask over that. That has been one idea.
While still wearing it, just refuse to communicate in anything other than mime.
Yeah, I've also considered going out with a pen and a notebook and answering everything written.
Nice.
Yeah. Because apparently talking is dangerous, so I won't talk then.
I did see a bit of a carnival-related white pill. People in Germany were still going, like, a group of people in costume is still paraded down the street, and the German police telling everybody to please leave the high street. You need to leave the high street, and these people are just skipping down the road in their costumes anyway. I think Germany's one of the places where it's gone really, really bad.
Yeah, there's even lawsuits against the government for the lockdowns and all of that.
Yeah.
So
they arrested a random anti-lockdown streamer.
Yeah, live on air. So it does seem like the Germans are on the ball in some way, at least.
I mean, it really means a lot to them. I was just saying to these lot while you were letting your cat out, these guys are doing this from the 6th of January right up until Easter. They got their greasy Thursday. Before Ash Wednesday, they start a big party. But they've been doing it doing stuff right from the 6th of January up until then.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Big thing, and it's big community tradition.
Yeah.
And you can see in these really traditional parts of Germany, people aren't going to take that lying down, really.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
And they are one of the populations who have had totalitarianism in recent history.
Yeah.
It does seem like the countries who haven't had that are the most lenient with what the governments are doing.
Absolutely.
Even the Faroe Islands are on lockdown, and they haven't had a single death. In Norway, we have had 600. And the total of infected is 77,000 out of 5.5 million people.
So it's not very much at all.
No, it's not. It's nothing, and some areas are in full lockdown. It's people don't have a sense of proportion at all. So
no, they don't. I doubt it's done much more than an average flu season. But yeah, we are coming up to about 9:30. Do you reckon we should have the other story?
Yeah,
I reckon we should.
I just want to make 2 more points from Italy.
Oh yeah, sure.
Sure. Picking up the thread on old traditions in Sardinia. Their costumes often depicts their old folklore, and the tradition is so old that different villages have different designs on their masks. That is really distinctive. So
similar in Germany too, yeah.
Yeah, and an interesting one is Pont Saint Martin. I'm sorry, that is more of a French pronunciation. I don't know how to pronounce it. But they have a Roman themed celebration, even with nymphs.
What? That's
Women,
cool.
the women's costumes are literally togas. They are nymphs. And
Toga nymphs.
yeah, there's someone who is supposed to be Saint Martin. He is dressed as a Roman soldier, and it culminates in the burning of an effigy of the devil on a 2,000-year-old bridge. So,
That all sounds like an aesthetic.
yeah, definitely an interesting variation that seems to differ quite a lot from most carnivals.
Now that sounds very interesting. All of
Yeah,
these wonderful carnivals to see if fun is ever allowed again.
yeah, well, it will. I do think it's very much tied to a local legend, considering the name of the city. You know, Point Saint Martin and Saint Martin. I would think one of Saint Martin's legends happened in that city. So,
That's true. That's
yeah.
true.
So that is an interesting local little tidbit.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the next story is indeed Italian. Takes place in Italy again. Now, it's not exactly standard, because in case anyone missed at the start, I basically had to write it. Because it's a Venetian scenari, and they're a very specific sort of play that happens at a Venetian carnival, and they're not entirely scripted. They're kind of half improvisation, half not. And so therefore I got this outline of a Venetian scenario from a website about the Commedia dell'arte. I'll explain a bit more about that term afterwards. And I liked it, and I liked the plot, so I wrote it into a story. And it's a bit of a long one. It's half an hour, but I think it's an interesting, like it's a good farce comedy.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this story, it's very Shakespearean vibes in the general plot.
Yeah.
I think definitely.
Quite a bit of situational comedy going on there. But you could almost say this is a Hearth of Europa original then.
Yeah, it kind of is, because I did write it. I got the plot beats, but all the dialogue and stuff. And yeah, I'll post the link of what was actually there. Like, the general plot structure is not mine, but I had to come up with justifications and the writing and the stuff like that. So that was a fun thing to do this week.
Yeah.
And hopefully you like it.
I would think so. Hearth of Europa exclusive coming up.
Mm-hmm. The haunted. I think I've said the haunted house. Ended up titling it the haunted mansion. Sounds a lot more grand.
Yeah. Okay, let's start the haunted mansion.
The Haunted House. There was once a young couple, Flavio and Lavinia, who were deeply in love. At every opportunity they would sneak off to be alone together, and gaze into each other's eyes, as lovers are wont to do. As with most young lovers, they probably rather thought they were being discreet. But it was obvious to everyone in the town that they were besotted with one another. One day, whilst walking in the gardens, Flavio turned to her and said, "My dearest Lavinia, I could never bear to be parted from you. I wish that we may spend the rest of our lives together, until we are old and grey." "Yes!" exclaimed Lavinia. "Oh, yes, yes! I wish it too." Then a look of great sadness darkened her fair features. "But my father, he will never allow it. And all because of those silly old stories about there being a ghost in your house." Flavio's residence, you see, had been the site of a grisly murder, hundreds of years prior. I shall not describe to you the gory details of this case, for it would be enough to chill the bones of the bravest and strongest man. Suffice to say, Lavinia's father, Signor Pantalone, had heard the story, and he wasn't a man to take any chances. Indeed, Pantalone was known around the town for his immensely superstitious nature. He would go out of his way to avoid a black cat, and he would never lay his hat on a bed. When he entertained, he always ensured there would never be 13 guests, and no one ever gifted Pantalone a knife, for if there was not a coin around that he could give you, he was the type of person who would insist upon pricking you with it, to ward off the bad luck that way. One thing he certainly always did was to avoid Flavio's house. He would take long detours on his errands, to avoid even venturing down Flavio's street. He had been observing his daughter and Flavio for some time, and he was indeed beginning to worry. He would never let his daughter move into that supernatural death trap. Flavio was very aware of all this as he mustered up the courage to knock on Pantalone's door. "What do you want?" snarled Pantalone. Flavio thought he better come right out with it. "Sir, I have come here to ask for your blessing, that I may have your daughter's hand in marriage." "Absolutely not. Not so long as you dwell in that cursed house of yours. I will never allow it." Lavinia, who had been waiting just a little way off in an alleyway, had had quite enough. She ran out from her hiding-place, enraged, with angry tears streaming down her face. "Father, why must you always obsess over these old superstitions? Flavio is a good and honest man, and why, his house is the grandest in town. It has been in his family for generations. All of our relations consider us a suitable match. Why would you deny us our happiness for the sake of an old tale?" "Oh, so you would rather be betrothed and at the mercy of malevolent spirits, may be cursed, may be dead, than to remain here with your mother and I? There are terrible spirits in that house, my daughter, and I fear for your safety. And as long as your beau insists upon inhabiting his haunted mansion, I simply may not allow it. That is all I have to say." With that, he slammed the door in their faces. "Do not worry, my love. The most magnificent palace in the world would seem as a dilapidated hovel to me, if you were not to dwell there as my wife. I shall return home, and ask my servant Mezzottino to prepare the property for sale at once. I shall need to have him make a sign," said Flavio resolutely. "I will love you no matter where we live. Oh, I pray you find a buyer soon. Lavinia! Come here this instant. My father calls. I must go. Goodbye for now, my love." Upon hearing of his master's resolution to sell the property, Mezzottino was very much dismayed. Both he and his master knew the house wasn't at all haunted. It was little more than a rumour, and neither of them had ever seen or heard anything out of the ordinary. However, Flavio was a rather heavy sleeper, and something that Mezzottino certainly hadn't shared with his master was that, for a small fee, he had been letting groups of curious sightseers into the house at night. It's amazing what you can do with flickering candles and some well-hidden bits of string, So this made him rather a lot of money. In fact, considerably more than he earned as Flavio's valet. He decided he must convince his master to keep the house. Right. So, you appreciate the urgency of my situation, yes? Prepare a for sale sign at once. With respect, sir, I think you are making a grave error. Why, have either of us ever once seen so much as a poltergeist in these halls? Would you ever find a house that you liked as much as this one, your ancestral home? It is true. It is a terrible shame that I must leave this house that has been in my family for generations, but what else would you have me do? I must wed my Lavinia. Sir, I have a plan. We shall invite old Pantalone to come and inspect the house himself. His daughter is quite insistent that she will marry you come what may, and he can hardly refuse to come when it concerns his daughter's safety. The house is not haunted. We know that. We will make a great show of all your wealth, such that any man would forget to think of spirits. You are right. Surely the old man cannot deny the suitability of this match once he has seen all of my family's riches. Go forth and issue a formal proclamation at once. Mezzottino was only too happy to hurry straight over to old Pantalone's house, and make the proclamation that he and his daughter were invited to dinner the next again night. Flavio's cooks, however, were not happy in the slightest, for the master was having them prepare many grand dishes, at what they considered to be far too short notice. Fresh loaves of bread were baked, and huge salamis and jars of olives were retrieved from the pantries. The best steaks were brought in, and the maids were run off their feet, rolling out pasta and making desserts, in preparation for the arrival of Lavinia and her father. On the day of the feast, Mezzottino and Flavio welcomed the pair effusively, especially Pantalone. Dearest Signor Pantalone, such an honour that you would allow us this chance to entertain you at our humble abode. The house was spotless, and all the finest china was out on display. Pantalone was initially jumpy. However, he was a man with a discerning eye when it came to antiques, for he was in the business of trading with fine luxury wares, and there were many distractions. As he would ask about items, Mezzottino would feign nonchalance. "Oh, this rug? I believe that's Persian silk. Gold and silver thread. It does have very intricate designs, although not quite to the master's liking when he got it. You could probably have that. We were planning on getting a new one." "Yes, you've a keen eye for these things. Correct. That is Calacatta marble. A little more expensive than the other types, but you get what you pay for. We have it everywhere, even the kitchen countertops. Ah, yes, it's 24-carat gold. Specially commissioned." After the tour of the house was complete, Flavio, having gotten dressed in his finest clothes, came out to greet his love and her father. They went to feast. Well, they made sure Pantalone was having a fine old time. Of course, they started him off with a little pre-meal aperitivo or two, and Mezzottino had made them a little stronger than he normally would, and then the wine with the first course, and the second course, and with dessert, not forgetting that one must have a liqueur as a digestivo, as they call it in Italy. After a while he was feeling very happy, having forgotten all about the supposed spirits. All the while Mezzottino expounded upon the wonderful qualities of his master, his bravery, kindness, generosity, and good taste, whilst Flavio modestly insisted that he considered himself quite ordinary. Lavinia, who had not had quite so much to drink as her father, for that is not the behaviour of a lady, found it unusual that Flavio's servant seemed to attribute to him even more wonderful qualities than even she could think of, However, the aim of the game was to convince her father to let them wed, so she enthusiastically nodded along with everything Mezzottino said. The man had a way with words. However, just as they were finishing up their dessert, and there had been a range of those, from crostata to bomboloni, to gelato and tiramisu, and Mezzottino was about to serve the coffees and liqueurs, then, even whilst in his inebriated state, Pantalone sat bolt upright. "What was that?" "What was what?" said Mezzottino, feigning puzzlement, although in truth he had heard it too. It had been somewhat unmistakable. It was a loud cry of frustration. Someone called out. "Oh, that. Yes, it did sound a bit like that, didn't it? It's terribly draughty up there in those old attics. We do get the wind whistling through there a lot. Terribly annoying. We really ought to get it fixed." Pantalone seemed somewhat reassured. After all, nothing bad had happened thus far. And so they talked after dinner, and Mezzottino made sure to laugh at all of Flavio's jests, as he attended to the needs of their guests most closely, offering Pantalone more liqueur. However, the noise happened again, this time accompanied by a thump, as if someone had banged on a door or the hard wooden floor. The wind must have blown something over up there. "It hasn't been very began Flavio. "Yes, well, it can come on very suddenly. Can't it, sir?" Mezzottino abruptly cut him off. Pantalone looked less reassured, and was looking around more warily. Mezzottino had an awful sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He suspected he knew what, or rather who, was up there, and it wasn't a ghost. Indeed, it happened again, the third time, and it was very obviously a man's voice. There were words this time. "Oh no! Oh help! Oh no!" with a banging and a rattling like someone trying to budge a locked door. Pantalone was not having it any longer. "Lavinia, we're leaving. They have lied. There are clearly spirits in this house. What reason would anyone here have to cry out so in despair?" Mezzottino thought on the spot. "Well, it could be the head cook. He can really get over-dramatic, very sensitive, these culinary types. We shall have him disciplined." Pantalone wasn't buying it. And what could he possibly be so upset about at this time in the evening? Preposterous! You have both lied. He got up, taking his daughter by the arm, and ran from the house, Lavinia stumbling behind him, somewhat faster than a man who has ingested so much alcohol ought to be able to do so. Flavio was distraught, and ran after them to the front door, but Pantalone had already grabbed their belongings and summoned a carriage. As he climbed in, dragging Lavinia with him, he shouted, "She will set foot in this house again, over my dead body!" "I love you, Flavio." "I love you too, my sweet Lavinia." Whilst Flavio had been temporarily distracted, attempting to catch his love, Mezzottino had come to the conclusion that the noise was exactly what he feared it was, for he had poked his head into the servants' quarters, and all had seemed quite calm. The cause of the noise was a young man named Arlecchino, who had gone on one of the haunted house tours, and evidently become lost. Mezzottino could have kicked himself. He'd assumed the young man had simply gotten bored of the tour and left. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the box, but for goodness sake, who wanders off in an allegedly haunted house in the middle of the night and gets themselves locked in a closet? Flavio rushed back in. "Why, if this is a spirit, I hope that once we expel it, it spends the rest of eternity burning in hell. My Lavinia will never be allowed to come near me again. I swear to you, Mezzottino, that it was one of the servants. they shall never work in a good household again. Sir, having checked in on the other servants, I find it very unlikely to be either. We must search the house for an intruder. You take the west wing, sir. I will look in the east wing. I thought the sound came from the east wing. Should we not just both go up there? We must be thorough, sir. Either of us would be a match for any sneaky thief we might find who's gotten himself lost in the attics. We shall cover the whole house quickly if we both go and check each end. I suppose you're right, Mezzatino. I tell you, if I'm the one to find him, he'll regret the day he was born. And with that, he grabbed a heavy-looking brass candlestick and set off towards the west wing with a purposeful stride. Mezzatino quickly ran up the servants' stairs, of which his master had no real knowledge, and was soon in the right part of the east wing, having located the small spare room in which Arlecchino was trapped. He unlocked it with his set of master's keys. A valet is a very important servant, and so along with the housekeeper, he had all the keys for the entire household. The housekeeper must have come round later than she usually did, for this spare room, which had been cleaned that day, should have been locked well before his tour had begun. Young man, what is the meaning of this? You were told to stay close to the group. The spirits might have seized you, Mezzatino added, sensing an opportunity to further the lore of the whole place. I needed to, relieve myself. I thought that this perhaps looked like the way to the privy. They trapped me in here. Mezzatino paused. There was no chamber pot in this room. Oh goodness, so where did you... The plant. In the vase. Oh. Mezzatino gathered himself. He'd deal with that presently. He quickly ushered Arlecchino out down the servants' steps, through the kitchens, past the bemused servants, who were mildly curious, but who were frankly too busy washing the enormous amount of dishes from the feast the night before. I heard them laughing, you know. Mezzatino had led the tours to believe that the master never spent the evenings in the house. For effect. Goodness only knows what demonic occasion the poor boy thought the feast was. Quickly, you must run. The only option for a man who hears the laughter of the spirits is to get very far away from here and never return, he animatedly explained, shoving the scared and confused boy out of the back door. Soon thereafter followed a very droopy pot plant. He ran back to meet his master in the main hall. I found out what it was, sir, he gasped. It was Signor Giordano. His cat had got stuck up a tree. You know how his wife loves that cat. Oh, it did sound awfully like it was coming from the house. It was their big tree. It got stuck up there, very near to an east wing window. What was the bang and the rattling then? Well, the window was actually open, and the cat got in and started wreaking havoc in one of the attic spaces, knocked everything over. Signor Giordano was mortified. Oh well. Tell him that I most certainly don't blame him. These things happen. Cats will be cats. We ought to have had the window closed anyways. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. I shall see to it that they are in future, sir. If only Signor Giordano's kitty knew what she cost me, said Flavio glumly. Mezzatino doubted she would care. Cats were like that. Mezzatino cursed. The old man was now convinced that there were spirits in the house. Ah, an idea occurred to him. Maybe he could use the old man's fear of ghosts to his advantage. The next night, Mezzatino gathered up the whitest sheets, wet his face, and applied chalk powder. He snuck into Pantalone's house, for he knew some of Pantalone's maids and where they kept the back door keys. He made his way into Pantalone's parlour, and leaned down very close to the old man, asleep in his chair. "Oh, Pantalone, I am the ghost of the old mansion. I am fond of your daughter. I shall do her no harm, but unless you send her to live with Flavio and I will come and live here, along with all my friends, for we like her very much." Unfortunately, Mazzatino never found out if the old man would have taken up the offer, as he was so terrified that he died of sheer terror at the sight of this pale apparition. Mazzatino stood awkwardly for a second. The old man had slumped in his chair. He was a manservant, alone in a parlour with the body of a rich gentleman. He needed no further prompting. He ran. Well, Mazzatino spent a rather restless few nights, and was rather jumpy every time someone knocked at the door, Flavio noticed. With good reason. He didn't know if one could be convicted for scaring someone to death, but he wasn't sure. At the very least, he had broken and entered. He needn't have worried. Everyone just seemed to assume that the old man had died of natural causes. Lavinia had mixed feelings. On the one hand, she of course had been quite attached to her father, as one tends to be. On the other hand, her father had been old. Ladders were allowed at home now. She could sleep with her feet pointing in any direction she liked, and she could finally marry her love, Flavio. And so Lavinia was soon distracted from her grief by the planning of a grand wedding. On the day of the wedding, most of the town was assembled in the congregation. Lavinia looked radiant in her bridal gown, and Flavio beamed at her as she walked into the church, escorted by her mother. She had tears in her eyes, probably a mixture of both joy and sadness. She joined her husband-to-be at the altar. "We are gathered here today to witness the matrimony of Flavio de Rossi and Lavinia Pantalone. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." At this moment the sky outside seemed to darken, and the church felt dreadfully cold, as the figure of old Pantalone entered the church, exactly as he had looked in life, except that he was grey, and had a phosphorescent glow about him. He began to advance upon the bride and groom. He seemed to glide instead of walk. He raised his arms and let out a long wail of anguish and anger. Flavio and Lavinia were frozen in horror, only for a moment, before Lavinia let out a terrified shriek, and the couple ran from the church. The panic spread through the congregation, who began to push over pews and shove others out the way, in order to get out of the building. Mazzatino was not in the church, but he was in the house nearby, polishing the finest silverware in preparation for the wedding breakfast. He heard the screams. He went nearly as greyish-white as the spectre of Pantalone himself, when he rushed to the window and saw the phantom pursuing the young couple with terrible cries. Mazzatino was thinking at light speed. He was beginning to regain some of his colour. So, with old Pantalone still around, the house really was haunted. Of course, he'd maybe figured a few things out since he had passed away. He'd had quite a lot of time to reflect, Mazzatino supposed. But he knew that the old man had always jumped on a good business opportunity. Mazzatino couldn't imagine that he had changed all that much. So Mazzatino ran to catch up with the ghostly apparition. "Wait! Wait!" he called. "Stop!" The shade turned. "You!" it spat. Yes. Hello. You are the one who slayed me. You frightened a frail old man to death. To be fair, it wasn't my intention. How was I to know you had a weak heart? In fact, technically speaking, that's what killed you. The Revenant and the old man paused to consider this. Does intention matter at this point? I have been tricked and dishonoured. My daughter will not marry a liar. I will haunt that blasted house for the rest of eternity, and all those who dare live in it shall be frightened to death themselves. Oh no, no, you have it all wrong. It was my fault. You see, I was running haunted house tours at night in the East Wing. A valet's income doesn't go very far, you know, not when one is a man of taste. When Flavio came home declaring that he wanted to move, I convinced him to stay. I told him that we could convince you that the house wasn't haunted, and in my defence it isn't. One of those idiot sightseers got lost. He reconsidered. Well, wasn't. I was having to get quite creative with tripwires and bits of string and the like. Nothing unnatural ever did happen in that house. But the tours were a very lucrative operation. Sure enough, the ghost's ears pricked up. Oh? Oh yes, very lucrative indeed. You can charge a lot. We can discuss figures in more detail, but I would estimate that if a ghost was actually guaranteed to turn up, admission price could be quadrupled, even. If you were to reserve your terrors exclusively for my patrons, I would of course split the profits. Your wife and daughter would be very well provided for. I believe we have a deal. Splendid. Just one question. How will you convince your master not to sell this house now? Well, Signor Giordano was not yet at the wedding. He was running late. He has always looked very like you, and what I think is, he was on his way to the wedding when there was an unfortunate accident with a cart full of flour. Why, I'm not surprised the bride and groom mistook him for your spectre. A few florins should get him and the miller to corroborate the story, don't you think? I think everyone will believe exactly what they want to believe. Indeed, said the ghost, in a tone that one could swear was impressed, as Mezzatino jogged away. Flavio and Lavinia went on to have a very happy married life, even if occasional odd noises were heard around their home. Mezzatino decided to install signs to the privy, just in case, and the couple were touched by how well old Pantalone had provided for his daughter, as a large sum of money was paid to both her and her mother every month.
Okay, so there we had an original of Heart of Europa. That's not bad. It's definitely a good story that Katrina wrote. I really liked it. So, bravo.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, these little commedia dell'arte, they're really nice little compact sort of comedies. I wrote one from an acting scenario, so that there's a very loose set of instructions for actors. But if anybody is into acting and the like, I mean, I know I've done things myself which have involved it. There's a whole bunch of play scripts on this same website as well, which are really cool. So I shall put that in the link in the description. I shall just link to the one that I based the thing off just to give you all the source. But yeah, that was really fun to write. One of the things that it's weird when you're like adapting these things is like, I don't know about anybody else, but I get quite caught up about historical accuracy sometimes. So I was like, what time period am I writing this in? Do they have toilets? What do they eat? I've said tiramisu here. Would one have actually had tiramisu in like the 16th, 17th century Italy? Who even knows? But you know, you can't get too carried away. Go looking at medieval Italian cookbooks just for the sake of writing a short story. Although I would if I could.
Then you might need a bit more than a week to do it.
Yes.
I would definitely
Exactly.
need more than a week, but I'm a bit literally challenged when it comes to writing stories, so it was never my strong point in school, so I would definitely need to.
It was good to have a plot provided,
Mm-hmm.
basically, because what has always been a struggle with writing to me is coming up with a plot and keeping track of where it goes and stuff like that. So that is probably the hardest part of story creating, in a way, is good plot. Because that's quite difficult to keep track of all the threads.
For me, it was
and stuff like that.
Yeah, in school, when I did use more creative writing, I always got the feedback from the teachers that I broke the literary rules, which pissed me off. I had
broke literary rules.
Yeah,
I feel like some writers have just made a living off of doing that, though.
Yeah,
breaking literary rules.
Yeah, for example, we're not supposed to use the word perfect for some reason. I never got a real answer why. So,
Is there's no? I've seen perfect used in folk tales.
Yeah.
These people are discriminating against folk tales.
Yeah, I did point out that I read perfect everywhere, basically. But according to Norwegian rules, we're not supposed to use perfect for some weird reason. So he does. Well, they are breaking the rules, and we're not. This isn't what we're doing in Norwegian class, and everything else just went, F you. I had quite a few discussions on stuff like that, so I basically just lost all interest.
I feel like schools provide you a general set of rules to stop you from falling into cliches until you are experienced enough with literature to know how to break them in a manner which is appropriate or unexpected.
Yeah, well, then they have to provide the actual education to do that, and they don't.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that English classes, I know so many people have been exactly the same English classes as me, not really come out of it with a great amount of appreciation for literature or how to construct a story, because they only got those English classes, never really got the wider perspective.
No,
but yeah,
they didn't for me either, but I'm not sure what was bad education and what was me being tired of school. I became tired of school very early, so I might have been a bit jaded in the first place. So,
well, another thing, just leading on, that we don't really get an education in school is the many different forms of theatre and drama. I don't know about anywhere else, but in the UK, drama is not a very serious class. Drama is where you play fun group games and pretend to be a tree. But a theatre form that I had absolutely no idea the existence of is the commedia dell'arte, reading comedy of the profession. It's actually an early form of professional theatre originating from Italy that was very popular all around Europe in the 16th and 18th century. It's also called commedia alla maschera, well, which kind of links to the German name for certain carnival masks they have, Maschera, and Commedia Improviso. But it's not quite improvised. Apparently, it was responsible for the advent of actresses, as opposed to just actors. And they were improvised performances based on sketches and scenarios. So the entrances and exits are scripted, but a lot of the stuff is left to your own devices of how you want to say it and or the specific meat you want to put on the bones. A special characteristic of them are the lazzi. A lazzo is a joke or something foolish and witty, so usually something well known to the performers and to some extent a scripted routine, and they can crop up within these commedia dell'arte. And I think, oh, and yeah, one of the common characters in them, Arlecchino, meaning Harlequin, cropped up within mine. In fact, most of the time, I obviously couldn't have him miming, but most of the time he would be miming in an actual stage performance. Which I only connected Arlecchino to Harlequin and the fact that was a cognate when I saw them side by side. It's like, oh yeah. Yeah, improvisation is really tricky, and the trickiest part of it is to improvise a plot. Because that can go really off the rails if the actors aren't all exactly on the same page and trying to cooperate and build a story and acting consistent with the character they've come in as or been given. So if you've ever been to an improv comedy show and it's been really bad, that's usually because they're throwing in a new wacky event or storyline or just improbable things happening, and they're just going on the weirdest funny rule. And that's the kind of stuff that can happen when if you're not careful and you're not thinking about where you're going. It kind of makes sense that you'd want the carnival plays to have an informal atmosphere, but you also would want some reassurance that they didn't become dissatisfying to the crowd, because I feel like crowds at a carnival in the medieval times, yeah, they might have thrown things. I don't think they were above that sort of behavior. A little bit drunk. Theatre was a little bit rowdy in those days.
Yeah, and also that several of those kinds of scripts that are in the public domain, they are from the 1600s and everything. So it's a way to also keep a play from becoming stale. You have the plot, but no play is the same as another because of the improvisation aspect of it. So I think that would be an advantage. I kind of have a love for improvising, so that can, though some disasters do appear when the actors have a very good chemistry and are able to play off one another, then it can become really, really good. And
good improv is freaking amazing, and you'd think it was scripted the way some really good improv comics and actors play off each other.
Yeah, I was watching the series. Don't judge me too hard. Orphan Black. If
I haven't watched it.
the base plot is quite interesting. It's to do with clones and everything. So if you're able to see past the obvious propaganda in it, I really like it. And the main actress, Tatiana, one of the clones' husband, she and him have a really good chemistry, and they both have a background in improv, and they really manage to get the most out of each other that way. So yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it can be really good or really bad.
I have no idea what this comment relates to on D-Live from Aussie. The Yeti and throw their poo out the window. Who does? Medieval Italians?
Maybe.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think.
Do they have the spaghetti at this time? That's where you gotta ask a food historian.
Yeah, but
You can't be sure.
Don't ask.
They have a primitive version of lasagna. That I do know.
Yeah, but make sure if you do ask, don't ask the raging feminists. As I have told before, I came across a video on Queen Victoria's eating habits, and 10 minutes in, I had to give up on an hour's lecture because she kept on going
Not
on
enough
rants.
women.
Not enough women in the kitchen in Victoria's kitchens. Then I gave up.
Yeah.
She kept going on anti-male rants, so I just couldn't take it. I wanted to hear about her food, not how bad men were, according to this historian at this time. So
Yeah.
be careful.
Oh dear. But yeah, the improv. It is a really good way of like, if actors can improvise, that is a marker of just being a really good actor, I think.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
closest we really have in the UK is a pantomime, where people get to improvise somewhat. They are scripted, but if the good ones, if you were to attend the same one twice, you wouldn't be really attending the same performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really have a tradition of that in Norway, in any kind. It's mostly just the same old plays being done, and new ones and everything. But we don't really have a tradition of pantomime or anything similar at all, which is sad.
Yeah. It's a shame, but it's not. Every country has different things which they have, which are cool. Norway don't have so much pantomimes and stuff, but like, you probably got a whole ton of stuff that we don't got.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah.
We all have our differences.
America don't have pantomimes either. Well, they do. They have something that they call pantomimes, but they're not. They don't have words. So I don't really know what Americans consider a pantomime to be. Yeah, but there's just a note about the picture that I used for that story. That is a picture of Palazzo Mastelli in Venice, and there is an old story about that building, about three very rich merchants named Rioba, Fani, and Sandy, around the 1100s, tried to sell poor quality fabric to a Venetian lady for a very high price. And after she discovered that fraud, she then cursed the money that she gave to them, and when they touched it, they were transformed into stone statues, which you can still see today in the square right behind that palace. So that was actually a spooky building.
Interesting. I was about to ask if they were transformed into grotesques or something, but apparently not.
Yeah. I don't know what they look like. what they look like. Those statues didn't have a picture of statues in the article that I read that in.
No, but if they're in the
But
square, then they probably look like normal people. You know, the grotesques are on the cathedrals. It's in the same vein as oh, what's the word again? I can't remember.
I don't know which word myself off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's just some stuff that I came across which is like quite unique to the Venice Carnival. Like, apparently it started as early as 1162,
Yeah.
and you got your masks, and there's all sorts of different masks. The people are different occupations, and they can be made of leather or porcelain or glass.
Yeah. It's gargoyle. I just remembered, so I just wanted to interject
yeah.
that. Yeah.
That would be it. Why
Yeah.
didn't I remember the word gargoyle?
Well, why didn't I?
It's not technically English in my defense, it is French.
Yeah, sometimes would escape you. So yeah. Yeah, the Mask Guild in Venice was also quite interesting. You know, it was a guild of making all of the masks, and
That's cool.
apparently they had their own laws.
That
So,
is, yeah. The guilds were kind of like entities unto themselves, and they sort of policed their own members.
yeah.
It was almost a little bit like the situation in fictional town of Ankh-Morpork.
Yeah.
Except I definitely don't think there was an assassins guild. I don't know.
Yeah. It did sound like the Mask Guild were sort of outside of the law, the usual law that everyone else had to abide by. So they definitely seemed quite powerful, but considering who might be their clientele, that's not really surprising, I suppose.
Indeed. Yeah. There were shenanigans other than masks during the carnival. There were shenanigans involving eggs, but not eggs. Apparently, the Great Council had to make it a crime for masked people to throw scented eggs. They were called ovi odoriferi. Sorry, that's very bad Italian pronunciation, I think. But they were eggshells, and they were usually filled with rosewater perfume and tossed by young men at their friends or at young women that they admired. But in some cases, they did fill them with ink or damaging substances.
Yeah.
I suppose in some cases, they were just eggs.
Yeah, I suppose the Venetians didn't like rosewater.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they thought it was scaring the ladies. Like, or maybe there was an incident with eggshell in someone's eye, or throwing eggs at people full of rose water actually hurt.
I would think it was some of those other substances that caused the problem. With, for example, something corrosive or something. Thrown at the wrong person a bit too high up,
Not good.
perhaps. No, that's not good. Rosewater and ink is quite benevolent, but other substances can be quite a lot and not all good. So
the young lady might disagree about the ink if it was her best dress.
That is true.
Oh, hi, Happy Face and Ratus Sweeticus.
Hello, good to see you.
Welcome, Ryleski.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to see you. There's a mask actually. There's a fairly modern mask called the Colombina. It is the one. I think it's the most stereotypical one. It's only a half mask, only covering the wearer's eyes and nose and upper cheeks. It's often very highly decorated with gold and silver crystals and feathers. I, in fact, have one. I realize that I have one. Don't ask me why. It was an event. It was a whole event. Bit too complicated to get into, but I've been to a few festivals and stuff. I was at a masquerade sort of ball thing, and I've learned that type of mask is called a Colombina, which is another stock character in the Commedia dell'arte, and she was a maid servant and a soubrette who was an adored part of Italian theatre for generations, and it was said it was designed for an actress because she did not want to have her beautiful face covered completely. And apparently, it is a modern creation. It's named after a character, but it is a modern creation because there are no historic paintings depicting its use on stage or in social life. That's an interesting one. They invented a mask based on one of these Commedia dell'arte characters.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. The plague doctor were mentioned in the D-Live chat earlier, and that is a staple of the masks in Venice and Italy. So it's definitely a look that has continued to live.
I have been to Venice, and seeing all the masks in the shops, the plague doctor ones and the full like blank face ones just staring out at you. I mean, they're really beautiful, but also it's just like freaky. You're seeing them like staring at you on every corner, and I kind of do and don't want to go there during Carnival because freaking mask people.
Yeah.
Weird, surreal looking costumes with clocks on their heads. Like, cool, but don't try and interact with me in any form of amateur dramatics, please.
Yeah. I've always thought it would be fun to, get a Venetian mask of some sort. But the full face covering ones. Over the last year, I have started wondering how well you can breathe in those over time. There's one sort of mask that is extends a bit out from the face, so you can eat with it and everything. But there's another kind, which I think is more famously known. I don't remember the name. I didn't get the notes on that. But that is quite tight-fitting, so it's not worn by people who are prone to claustrophobia, for example. And, you can't eat with it and everything, so maybe just for short periods of time, perhaps.
Yes, perhaps just for short periods of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like tempted now because one is going to maliciously comply with face covering regulations, creeping everybody the heck out with a Venetian mask.
Yeah, that would
seem about
fun.
the right way to go about it.
Yeah. For quite a time, I kept my thought of the sheep mask due to the double meaning of it. That would be a bit fun. Of course, you have going along with the rules like a sheep, and also with the so-called vaccine that we don't know what will do to you. So that will be a place on Dolly.
Don't mention the vaccine. That might shut us down. Shut it down. Do I have a YouTube channel? No. Everything that I do on here. This is the only project that I'm currently involved in. We'll see if I have time for another project or channel in my life. Like you know, if further developments in my life make me want to talk about some other topic. I mean, I do have other topics which I quite like to talk about. It's just a matter of time, really. Yes. But this is definitely where all the story reading happens. Do all my story reading on here.
Yeah, it does take quite a bit of time, actually. Doing these shows. That was actually a bit surprising. I didn't realize how much time it would take. With getting finding the stories, doing the research, recording them, and all of that. So it's quite time consuming, actually.
Yes. Next week is another chunky topic. It's getting Arthurian next week. That is the 21st. But we do have a bit of help and someone who might know quite a bit more about the Arthurian stuff. I have to check in with him about the time zones. Actually, he's gone forward, I think. But yeah, we shall announce that on Monday in the week. That should be very cool to have a conversation about the Arthurian legends.
Yeah.
So do tune in for that.
Yeah, I know so little about them, so it's definitely good to have get someone who knows them better than me on, because it's quite a topic.
Yeah, it is. It's very big, and we've been, people have been definitely wanting to talk about it. So that is what we're tackling next week. But yeah, really hope that you've all enjoyed our stories related to the carnival. Not many stories directly involving carnival, but we really had fun finding these little related pieces. And I hope you'll have a really good evening.
Yeah, Michael Greif has, I'm sure I mispronounced that, but he had a very nice comment on YouTube. You'll talk about anything you'll like. I could enjoy the two of you reading a dictionary. Your voices and accents are so pleasant. Well, thank you. That is very
pretty nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
yeah.
I think that is it for tonight. So
that would be it, yes.
Yeah, hope you all have a wonderful Sunday, however much is left of that for you, and have a great week, and we'll dive into the Arthurian world next Sunday. Same time, same place.
We shall see you next week for chivalry and things.
Is that when we get to chivalry and stuff?
And stuff?
Yeah.
Grails. Swords and shit.
Yeah. Transformation and shit.
Oh dear. Okay. It's getting late. Oh dear.
It was. So, okay, I think that will be it, everyone. So, good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.